I moved into the old apartment building at the end of Maple Street on a chilly autumn afternoon. The building was old, but had character with its brick walls and narrow hallways, peeling paint and creaky floors. It was affordable and close to my new job, which was why I didn't question the place much despite the odd rumors I'd heard from some neighbors. The moment I stepped inside my apartment on the third floor, I noticed something strange. The carpet in the living room was worn and threadbare in places, but there was one distinct area near the far wall where a small hole had appeared. It looked fresh, like the threads had been pulled apart recently. I couldn't explain how or why, but it drew my attention every time I entered the room. At first, I thought it was just a hole in the carpet caused by wear or some forgotten accident, but then I started to notice things I couldn't ignore at night. When everything was quiet, I could swear I heard faint whispers coming from that very spot. The voices were soft, barely audible, but they were there, a steady murmuring that didn't belong in an empty apartment. I tried to convince myself it was the wind or the building settling, but the whispers had a rhythm, a cadence, like someone was trying to say something. I strained to listen, but every time I thought I caught a word, it slipped away into silence. Days passed, and the whispers grew louder, or maybe it was me growing more attuned to them. I began to avoid the living room at night, choosing to sit in the kitchen or bedroom. Instead, the hole in the carpet seemed to pulse with something unseen, as if it had a life of its own. I was not sure if I was losing my mind or if something was truly there. Beneath the threads, one morning I found small objects arranged near the hole: a broken watch, a rusted key, and a faded photograph of a woman with hollow eyes. The photograph looked old, but somehow familiar, like it had been in my family for generations, though I had never seen it before. The objects were not mine, and I had no idea who could have left them there. I started locking the door carefully and checking the apartment at all hours, but the items appeared mysteriously overnight. I confided in a co-worker who told me stories about the building, about a tenant who disappeared years ago in that very apartment, about strange noises and a feeling of being watched. I dismissed it at first, but the stories mirrored my own experience too closely to ignore. I began to dream of the hole, the darkness beneath the carpet, turning into a gaping maw that swallowed me whole in the dreams. I heard those whispers clearly now, calling my name, beckoning me down into the darkness. I woke soaked in sweat, unable to shake the feeling that something was waiting for me just out of sight. I found myself walking toward the hole almost in a trance, running my fingers along the rough edges of the carpet threads, listening to the voice just beyond comprehension. The whispers promised answers, but also warnings. They spoke of pain and loss of time and memories I could not place. I don't know how much longer I can stay here. The hole is growing larger, or maybe I am getting closer. It waits beneath my feet, whispering secrets I am afraid to understand. But every day, I feel it pulling me closer and closer. If you find yourself near an old carpet with a hole that whispers, listen carefully. But be warned, some secrets should never be uncovered. The sound woke me up again. That faint, sibilant noise, like someone exhaling through clenched teeth. I had fallen asleep on the couch, TV on, volume low, but the sound hadn't come from the speakers. It came from under the floor, under the carpet. I didn't look at the hole right away. I pretended to keep sleeping, hoping it was just the wind outside or some mechanical hum of the house settling. But even in the silence, that whisper, almost a breath, continued. It was coming from the small hole I'd found earlier that week. I stood up, stiff and shivering. The room was dark except for the TV's flickering screen, casting blue light over the furniture like cold lightning. I stared at the spot where the sound was coming from, the exact center of the living room carpet. I took a step forward. The sound stopped. Another step. Silence. I bent down, pressing my ear to the spot. Nothing. No breath. No whisper. Only silence. But when I stood again and turned to go back to the couch, I heard it softly, directly behind me, a whispered word. Don't. I froze. There was no one in the house but me. The door was locked. The windows shut. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, I ripped the carpet up. I don't know what I expected to find. Mold, mildew, a vent maybe, but there was nothing. Beneath the carpet was wood, discolored and splintered. But in the same exact spot where I'd heard the whisper, the wood was different. It looked burned, charred at the edges of a small circular patch the size of my palm, like someone had set a cigarette down and let it smolder into the boards. Only deeper, blacker. I touched it. It was warm, no hot. It stung the tip of my finger like metal left out in the sun. I recoiled and stepped back. The pain wasn't unbearable, but it lingered for hours, a small welt forming on my skin like a brand. That night, I placed a chair over the hole. It was stupid, but something about it made me feel safer. I told myself it was just paranoia, nerves from moving into an old house and living alone. But deep down, I didn't believe that. Not anymore. I called a local contractor. Told him I had a strange patch in the floor that felt weak or maybe fire damaged, and asked if he could take a look. He showed up 2 days later, a middle-aged guy named Kent with rough hands and a smoker's voice. I showed him the spot. He knelt, touched the wood. This burn go all the way through? I shrugged. Not sure. It's hot sometimes, though. He gave me a strange look. Hot? You mean like electrical? No, not like that. It just feels hot, like it's alive. He paused, knelt again, and placed his whole palm over the patch. Then he jerked back. You messing with me? He said. I shook my head. Something moved under there, he said, pale. I swear to God, I felt it shift. Like it was breathing. Kent left in a hurry. Said he'd come back with tools. He didn't. I called him 3 times over the next few days. No response. Then, 3 days after his visit, I got a call from his wife. She asked if I had seen Kent recently. He had gone missing the day after he visited my house. Never came home. Didn't show up to any of his appointments. My stomach sank. I told her he'd come by. Looked at the floor, said he'd come back. Then I asked, carefully, if he said anything strange when he left her that day. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that made my blood turn to ice. He told me not to sleep near the floor. That night, I didn't sleep in the living room. I locked the door to it from the inside and moved to the bedroom upstairs. I even wedged a chair under the doorknob, for good measure. But around 3:17 a.m., I woke up to a sound I couldn't explain. Not the whisper, not the breath. Something worse. It was a soft, repetitive knock, like fingertips on wood, directly beneath my bed. I leapt up, heart pounding, and moved to the hallway. I didn't go back in that room the rest of the night. The next day, I rolled the carpet in the living room back completely. That burned spot had grown. Not in diameter, it was still palm-sized, but it had deepened. There was now a hole in the wood. Not big, maybe 2 inches across, but too dark to see into. I leaned close. That's when I smelled it. Perfume. Faint. Floral. But old. Musty. Like someone had spilled a bottle of lavender cologne in a coffin and sealed it away for 50 years. And underneath that scent, even fainter, something rotting. I stared into the hole for a long time. And just before I stood up to back away, I saw it. Movement. A flicker of something. Pale. Like skin. Like a fingertip curling just out of view. I didn't go back into the living room for a day after seeing that pale flicker move beneath the hole. I told myself I was tired, that maybe I imagined it. Hallucinations aren't uncommon with stress and sleep deprivation, right? But the smell, that old, choking floral scent mixed with something dead, that was real. My clothes stank of it. My hair. Even after a long, hot shower, I could still feel the invisible fingers of that perfume crawling in my nostrils. Whatever was under the floor hadn't just shown itself. It had touched me. I started sleeping in my car in the driveway. It felt ridiculous. I'm a grown man, not a child, but when your house starts whispering to you, you stop worrying about pride. On the third night of car sleeping, I woke up in the driver's seat around 2 a.m. to the distinct sound of knocking. Not from outside the car, from the house, from inside the house. 3 knocks, then a pause, then 3 more. I sat frozen, staring at the dark silhouette of the home, moonlight gleaming on the windows like dead eyes. The sound didn't come again, but something told me that if I stepped inside, it would resume louder, closer, and maybe this time, not from the floor. I didn't go back until morning. When I opened the front door, the perfume hit me like a slap. It was stronger now, dense, sickly sweet like rotting roses, layered with that sour skin undertone that reminded me of death. Not that I know the scent of a corpse firsthand, but this is what I imagined it would be. I moved carefully into the living room. The hole in the floor was larger, wider now, maybe 4 inches, deep enough I couldn't see the bottom, and there were scratches around the rim. Fresh ones, thin and jagged like something had been trying to claw its way up. Or maybe out. I considered calling someone. The police? A priest? A contractor again? But what would I tell them? There's a haunted hole in my carpet that smells like perfume and whispers to me? No, they'd think I was insane. And maybe I was. That night, I set up my phone with the camera pointed at the hole and let it record while I slept in the guest bedroom, door locked, white noise machine blasting. I didn't sleep, of course. I just stared at the ceiling, waiting. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. At first, nothing. Just silence, the occasional creak of the house, the distant hum of passing cars. Then, at 3:33 a.m., it started. The sound was soft at first, a dragging sound like nails scraping across wood. Then a faint whisper, unintelligible, raspy, repetitive. I turned up the volume. Come closer, closer. Then the knocking began. Slow, deliberate. 1, 2, 3. Silence. 1, 2, 3. Then something rose into frame. Not clearly. The image was grainy, but I swear I saw the edge of face. Just a portion. A pale cheek, an eye blackened like a void, and something glistening at the corner of the mouth. It hovered there for a few seconds, then receded, and the screen went black. Not because the recording stopped. No, the phone kept filming, but something had blocked the camera. When I went to check, the lens was covered in a dark, oily substance that smelled like perfume, mixed with blood. I threw the phone in the trash. That day, I called a floor repair company and told them I needed emergency work done. Something in my subfloor was compromised, I said. I didn't care how much it cost. I just wanted the hole gone. They sent 2 guys out the next day, Rob and Hector. Normal dudes. Friendly, not superstitious, until they saw the hole. They both got quiet when they looked at it. Rob knelt down, his face tight. Hector muttered something in Spanish under his breath, crossed himself, and backed out of the room. I asked what was wrong. Nothing, Rob said. Just strange burn pattern. They started tearing out the boards. I stayed outside. An hour later, Rob came out to smoke. His hands were shaking. When I asked what they'd found, he hesitated. There's a cavity, he said, under the floor, like a crawl space. He shook his head. No, it's not on the blueprint. It's small, like someone dug a hole intentionally and sealed it with wood. We cleared it out, and we found something. He wouldn't say more, just looked at me, dropped his cigarette, and walked to the van. They finished the job in silence. Replaced the floorboards. Patched the carpet. I asked again what they found. Rob didn't respond, but Hector finally turned to me and said, it was a box. A box. Small, like a jewelry case. Did you open it? He nodded slowly. It was empty, but he looked up at me, eyes full of something I didn't understand. Fear, maybe. When I opened it, I smelled my mother's perfume. He whispered, she died 2 years ago. Then they left. Neither of them would return my calls after that. That night, I slept in my bed for the first time in days. The floor was patched. The hole was gone. I was safe, or so I thought. At exactly 3:33 a.m., I woke up to a sound that made my blood stop in my veins. Knocking, not from the living room, not from the floor, from inside the bedroom closet. 3 knocks, then a whisper clearer than ever. Let me in. I didn't move. The knocking came again. 3 solid thuds, deliberate, heavy, not for settling wood or shifting beams. These were fists, from inside my bedroom closet. I stare at the door across the room, its frame half illuminated by the ambient streetlight leaking in through the blinds. The doorknob didn't turn. It didn't open, but the knocking continued. 3 knocks. A pause. Then, let me in. The voice was different now, not a whisper. A plea. It had depth, texture, like vocal cords were finally forming on whatever was clawing its way into my reality. My throat tightened. Every part of my body screamed to run, but I couldn't move. I felt nailed to the mattress, heart hammering, lungs barely pulling in air. A dense weight settled over my chest, as if the room itself thickened. Knock, knock, knock. It sounded impatient now. I don't know how long I lay there, but when I finally gathered the courage to move, it was already dawn. The closet door was cracked open, just a sliver, just enough. I left the house. I didn't pack a bag, didn't call anyone. I just grabbed my keys and drove. I pulled into a gas station 2 towns over and sat in the parking lot for 3 hours, hands gripping the wheel, eyes red from exhaustion and fear. I tried to remember who I could trust, who I could talk to. Every name felt distant, like people I once knew in another life. Eventually, I called my sister, Claire. She picked up on the 3rd ring, her voice confused and groggy. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not out of malice, just life, distance. Hey, I said, my voice cracking. Can I stay with you for a bit? She didn't hesitate. Of course. Are you okay? No. Her place was an hour and a half away, and she was waiting at the door when I arrived. She hugged me without asking questions, then let me collapse on the couch with a blanket and a cup of something hot I didn't drink. That first night at Claire's, I slept hard. No whispers, no knocking, no perfume, just peace. But the second night, it followed me. I woke around 3 a.m. to the smell of perfume. The same sickly sweet, floral scent, sharper now, mixed with something metallic. I sat up in the guest room, pulse racing, and then I heard it. Knock, 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 from a floor. I stood, terrified, backing into the far corner of the room. The knocking stopped. The silence was worse. Then, "Don't leave me here." The whisper came from under the carpet. I dropped to my knees, trembling, pressing my ear to the floor. Silence. Then a breath. Warm, right against the wood. "You brought me with you." I left Claire's that morning. Didn't explain. Just hugged her, said something vague about work and drove. Back to the house. Because somehow I knew if I didn't go back, it would find its own way out. It would dig deeper, spread, and I was the only one who'd seen its face. When I opened the front door, something was wrong. The air was heavier, denser, a pressure pushed in on my skull, like descending in a plane without equalizing. The house smelled, not just the perfume now, but rot. The floor was damp, not wet, not water, but something that soaked into the carpet and warped the boards beneath. A dark, sticky residue that made a faint slurping sound when I stepped. I followed it to the living room. The hole was back, but it wasn't a hole anymore. It was a mouth. The floor had buckled inward, forming a concave pit about 3 feet across. The boards around the edges were splintered and jagged, like teeth. Something had torn its way out. My stomach turned. Something was out, and I had no idea where it was. I called a priest. I didn't even know how to ask for one. Just Googled emergency exorcist and begged the first person who answered. Father Callahan was old, stooped, eyes sunken but sharp. When he stepped inside my home, he stopped breathing for a full minute. "You weren't supposed to open it," he said. I didn't know. Not you. They. I asked what he meant. There's a reason houses settle. Why we hear things at night. Sometimes they're echoes. Sometimes they're warnings. And sometimes they're things that should have stayed buried. He didn't elaborate. Just walked into the living room and placed a hand over the pit. Then he recoiled. "It's awake." He tried to bless the house. Tried being the key word. As he walked from room to room, he began to stutter. Sweat soaked his collar. His hands trembled. "It's moving," he muttered. In the hallway, the light bulbs popped. In the kitchen, the sink filled with blood. In the guest room, something knocked from under the bed. 3 knocks. Then a whisper, "You're not him." Father Callahan dropped the rosary. It melted on the floor. He left without finishing the blessing, and never returned my calls again. That night, I tried to board the pit, nailed thick planks across the living room floor, poured salt in a circle, lit every candle I could find, slept on the couch, knife in hand, cross on my chest. At 3:33 a.m., I woke to knocking, but not from the pit, from inside my head. 3 pulses, 3 vibrations, then a voice, not out loud, but so vivid I heard in my bones, "Let me in." I screamed, and the boards began to splinter. I didn't sleep. After the planks splintered and the voice filled my skull, I sat with my back against the wall until morning light poured in through the broken blinds. But light no longer offered safety. Not here. Not in this house. By 7 a.m., the boards covering the pit had crumbled completely. The wood was soaked in a black, gluey substance. One of the nails had rusted in just a few hours, and the hole was bigger, no longer just a mouth. It had depth now. It went down. I stood at the edge and dropped a marble inside. No sound, not a bounce, not a clatter. Just a sickening silence that seemed to absorb the moment, like the air had thickened to syrup. The shadows around the pit pulsed, slowly, like a lung inflating and deflating. That was when I noticed the carpet. The original carpet. It wasn't just torn. It was burned. Under the rug, where the floor dipped inward, there were black scorch marks radiating outward like a sunburst. They reached across the living room floor in all directions, toward the hallway, the kitchen, even the staircase. And in the center of the hole, scratched into the wood, was a name. A. Howard, 1912. I needed answers. The local library had newspaper archives, yellowed and brittle, but still intact. I searched for any mention of the name A. Howard. It took hours, but I found it. Annabelle Howard, age 11, missing, declared dead, 1912. The article was short, just a paragraph. Young Annabelle Howard, daughter of coal miner Edward Howard and seamstress Judith Howard, was last seen playing in the parlor of their home on 311 Willow Street. After searching the home thoroughly, the child was presumed lost in a cave-in beneath the house. Her body was never recovered. The article continued on page 2, but the page was torn. Gone. My house, 57 Wren Hollow, was once the site of a mine collapse. They built on top of it, built over it, and no one told me. That night, I did something stupid. I went into the pit. I didn't plan to, not really, but the whispers began again around 2 a.m., and by 3:10, I found myself standing barefoot at the edge, flashlight in one hand, rope tied around my waist, the other end anchored to the base of the couch. The hole pulsed like a heartbeat. Slow, deep. I climbed in. The walls were not dirt. They were flesh. Dark, moist, vein-lined surfaces that pulsed against my palms. I nearly vomited, but kept descending, the air growing colder and thicker with each foot. 10 feet. 15. 20. The rope went slack. That was when I heard it, a child's giggle. High, soft, melodic. Then another voice, a man's, whispering behind me. You're not the first. I turned. No one there. But shadows moved in ways they shouldn't. Angles bent the wrong direction. The air breathed. And then I landed. At the bottom was a room. Perfectly square. Carved into stone. The walls were lined with shelves filled with dolls. Dozens of them, all with missing eyes. And in the center, a small wooden chair. On the chair sat a girl, or what looked like a girl. She wore a lace dress, matted with age. Her skin was gray and cracked like porcelain. Her eyes were empty, black sockets that leaked a tar-like substance. And from the empty pits came a whisper, "You found me." I backed away. The walls groaned. The floor shifted. And then she smiled, but not with her mouth. The flesh of her face peeled open across the cheeks, revealing rows of tiny, jagged teeth beneath the skin. "You'll stay," she said. I turned to run, but the hole was gone. Only solid wall. Behind me, I felt her stand. Heard her bare feet on the stone. "You're mine now." I don't remember how I escaped. I woke in the living room, face pressed to the floor, mouth full of blood. My arm was dislocated. Rope was wrapped around my neck, not waist. No memory of climbing out. But my shirt was torn, and on my chest, drawn in ash, was a symbol, a spiral inside a sunburst. The same pattern from the scorched floor. The next day, I visited the county records office. The original Howard house had been condemned twice, in 1914 and again in 1946. Complaints range from foul odors and strange noises to reports of missing children. Each time, the foundation was filled and built over. Each time, it came back. Every 33 years. 1912, 1913, 1914 now. 2024. I was the next chapter. I tried to move out. I packed a suitcase and booked a motel. But the moment I stepped out the front door, something tugged my leg. Hard. I fell onto the porch. Looked back. There was a hand reaching out of the carpet. Small, gray, childlike, gripping my ankle. You live here now. That night, the walls wept. Dark stains bled through the paint, soaking the wallpaper. Faces appeared in the mirror, not reflections, but watchers. I tried to record it. My phone melted. Tried to call someone. No signal. Tried to scream. My voice failed. I was alone. With her. The final straw came when I found the grave in the basement. I never used a crawl space, but the door had been left open, something I never did. Inside, in the far corner, beneath a mound of old insulation and rotted wood, was a small coffin, unmarked, freshly unearthed. Inside, a decaying doll with no eyes, and a note pinned to its chest. She never left. She just went deeper. They say fear changes you, but they never tell you how permanent that change is. It doesn't go away when the sun rises. It doesn't fade when you leave the place behind. That kind of fear isn't tied to space or time. It latches onto your soul like a burrowing insect, crawling deeper, laying eggs of doubt, madness, and terror that hatch long after the screaming stops. I left the house at 4:17 a.m., barefoot, bloodied, and broken. I didn't lock the door, didn't look back, but she followed. I moved across the state, took nothing with me. Not the clothes, not the furniture, not the phone. All of it had been tainted, touched by her. I found a small studio apartment above a laundromat. Clean, no history, white walls, linoleum floors, no carpet. The silence was deafening at first, a void that should have been comforting. But silence became the stage for something else, something waiting. 3 nights in, I found the first sign. A small piece of carpet in the center of the room. Just a square. Just sitting there, like it had always been part of the floor. But I didn't own any carpet. The next night, the square had grown. An oval now. A soft, grayish color. Old, frayed around the edges. And when I leaned down to touch it, the whispers returned. Lay down. I burned it. But in the morning, it was back. I went to the local church. I didn't even know if I believed in anything anymore. But I was desperate. The priest, a pale man with tired eyes, listened to everything. He didn't laugh, didn't question. He only asked one thing. Did you speak to her? I said yes. He closed his Bible and stood up. Then it's already too late. I started researching again. This time, not just the house. Not just Annabelle. I searched for the symbol burned into my chest, the spiral inside the sunburst. And I found it. A forbidden glyph tied to ancient burial rituals from pre-colonial settlers. It was called the Spiral Gate. It marked a door, a passage not just between life and death, but between worlds. It was never supposed to be opened, but they did. The Howard family had unknowingly built their home atop a thin place, a fractured scar in the earth where the spiritual veil was worn nearly transparent. And when the mind collapsed, something came through. Not a ghost, not a demon, something older. It took the form of a child, or maybe it became the child it consumed. Annabelle was its vessel, its echo, its lure. And now it wanted another. I was next. The symbol proved it. And so did the dreams. The dreams were no longer dreams. I would wake on the floor. Same position. Same spot. Each time, the carpet beneath me was larger. Each time, the whispers grew louder. We remember your name. Come closer. Be still. One night, I reached beneath the center of the growing carpet and felt something give. A latch. I pulled. The floor peeled away like skin, revealing a hole. No bottom, just blackness and sound. Muffled crying, scratching, the echo of a lullaby sung by a dying throat. And her voice. I'm cold. Hold me. I ran. Took a train north. Changed my name. Paid cash. Lived off the grid. It didn't matter. The hole was already inside me. It began subtly. Missing time. 1 hour. Then 3. Then full nights lost. I'd wake up in parks. On the edge of lakes. In the middle of roads. Sometimes barefoot. Sometimes with mud under my nails. Sometimes with scratches on my arms that formed words. Words like, not enough. She's not done. Bury me deeper. I tried psychiatric help. Meds. Isolation tanks. Hypnosis. Nothing worked. Because it wasn't a trauma. It was a bond. A tether. And with every day, she was pulling harder. One night, I heard footsteps in my kitchen. Soft. Bare. Rhythmic. Like a child pacing. I grab a knife. Burst in. Nothing. But the refrigerator door was open. Inside was the old doll I had buried. The one from the coffin. Its empty socket stared at me. And it smiled. Not figuratively. Its cloth face shifted. And it whispered, "You brought me here." I knew what I had to do. I couldn't run anymore. I had to go back. Not to escape. To end it. Or be consumed. I returned to Wren Hollow. The house was boarded up. No one had bought it since I left. The listing was gone. Records erased. Like it had been quietly removed from existence. I broke in. The air inside was still and heavy, like breathing underwater. The carpet had overtaken the living room. The entire floor was now soft, pulsing warm, like flesh. And in the center was the hole, wider than ever. A black eye staring up, waiting. I stepped in. No rope this time. No flashlight. Only resolve. And fear. The descent was instant. The wall swallowed me, but I didn't fall. I sank. I passed through layers of memories, of screams, of centuries. I saw glimpses of others. People. Children. Old men with hollow eyes. A woman screaming with her jaw unhinged. All of them looking up at me and whispering, "She never left." And now, neither will you. I landed in the room. But it was different now. No longer stone. It was bone. The walls pulsed with veins and arteries. Faces stretched beneath the surface like trapped souls in amniotic fluid. The chair was still there. So was she. Older now. Or maybe younger. Her form changed constantly. Child. Woman. Corpse. Doll. Void. She smiled, wide, impossibly wide, and said, "You brought me home." I dropped to my knees. Tears came, but not from fear. From recognition. I had seen her before. Not just in the house. In dreams as a child. In the shadows under my bed. She had always been there. "You're mine now," she said. Then she leaned close and whispered, "Take my place," and handed me a doll. It looked like me, made of skin, stitched with hair. I screamed, but nothing came out. This is the last thing I'll ever write. If you're reading this, burn it. Don't go to Wren Hollow. Don't look for her, because if you know about her, she knows about you. I feel the hole growing again, this time in my apartment. Yes, I came back. Or maybe she let me leave, so I could bring others. Like you, there's carpet in my kitchen now. A perfect circle, gray, faintly whispering. And if you listen, really listen, you'll hear your own name being called. Softly, from beneath.